meeting, special budget workshop meeting to order, August 29th at 6:11 p.m.
It's okay.
Any citizen comment?
I'll make a comment.
Yes.
Most everybody here knows who I am and knows that I have very strong opinions, but I'm not hugely active about pushing an agenda. And this is not a threat in any way, but anybody who votes for a increase only in cost without making any cuts whatsoever, I'll work very actively at the next election to see that they're replaced with somebody conservative.
Thanks, sir, appreciate it. Action items, view discussion and possible action. You will have to vote on this tonight before we leave here on the 2022-2023 general fund and water and sewer fund budgets and proposed property tax rate, which you've already done. Well, it hasn't been voted in yet, but you've agreed on it, on a rate. So, look at the documents in front of you. We've had several models to raise some additional money to water and sewer. As you know, we can't raise the tax rate beyond the three options that the state gives you unless you take it to the voters, and that will be next year. Christina, since you spent all day throwing this together, you want to comment on it?
Just for y'all, the worksheets that were provided.
You have four different options.
Option one is gonna be mute, because that was based upon calculating up to 20,000 gallons usage, and it didn't capture everybody, as far as I'm trying to give you a rough estimate. The other options, I will say that I know that the spreadsheets are small print, but I was trying to reduce it down as much as I could just for supportive documentation, to give you the numbers that are based upon the July recount. These are the numbers that are represented in the left-hand column where it goes the rates of 0 to 999 up to 80,000 on page 2. Those are actual, about even, rounded to the closest thousand numbers that we had activity on in July. I hope to have gone back and gotten several months to recap this on, but because we had to pull everything out of the system manually, I was trying to get the closest one with the closest data. And let it be known that each one of these values are rounded to the closest 1,000. If a citizen uses 9,325 gallons of water or sewer or whatever, it's gonna be shown to be rounded to the closest, it'll be rounded to 10,000. That's gonna be on every one of the pages. Because it's over 9,000, it's not quite 10,000, but the customers are gonna be billed based upon their actual usage. But for a snapshot, I had to round it up to the closest thousand. These numbers on any of the options are going to change monthly. It's gonna be based upon everybody's usage. It's gonna be based upon if we have people to leave or people to come in. It's gonna fluctuate up or down. So trying to capture that to give you true numbers, this was the closest I could think of to calculate it out based upon the various rates that we have, whether it be inside the city limits for water, outside the city limits, whether it be commercial water or sewer or whatever. So what I tried to do was to keep you from straining your eyes on every individual little worksheet. I pulled the values based on the percentage increase off of each option, and I put it on the front cover page. When you look at it, it doesn't look like a whole lot of money for each little area. Like on option 2, if you increase your residential water outside the city limits, it's a whole $48.08 with a 5% increase. But if you do the residential sewer inside the city limits, it's $1,009 And that's not impacting any one person harder than the other, and that's just based upon your 5% increase. Each one of those increments are broken down by percentage, from which is what we had, Randy and I had discussed on the 5%, 8%, or 10%. If you look at your individual worksheets, on some of them, there's gonna be a blue line at the top. Those are gonna be values that are gonna be less than 1,000. The only thing I can decipher from that is gonna be our volunteer firemen who get a discount off of their water rates or their sewer rates, and that's reflected on there, so I wanted to capture that. That's gonna be based upon the number of firemen who participate within their requirements each month. That's gonna fluctuate as well, because it's not constant each month. So those numbers will fluctuate, but looking at each one of your areas, the 1,000 and 2,000 gallons, the usage since we bill based upon a 2,000 or less, those numbers are based upon your rate. For example, water, $23 for 2,000 or less, and those numbers are gonna be identified, highlighted in orange, because it added 1,000 and 2,000 total number of citizens together. It added those numbers together to represent it for those citizens that use that much for their water usage. When it gets out of the highlighted area, it's a little bit easier to read. As far as each one of the breakdowns, like I said, each page is identified as to what it is. The more data, when I ended up going in and capturing all usages, like on page 4, it shows us using up to 80,000 gallons of sewage. To increase that, to capture the actual dollar amount based on that, it caused the file, the spreadsheet to automatically reduce it down, so therefore the print was smaller. So I apologize for that, but I was just trying to reduce it as much as I could to where it, to give you as much data as I possibly could. In option 2, it is based upon the rate for the water and sewer. You got a 5%, 8%, or 10% increase for your water, for residential, commercial, inside city limits and outside city limits. When you get to your sewage, residential area do not pay anything above 10,000 gallons in sewage. When you look at the numbers below 10,000 gallons, you've got several people that actually use more than 10,000 gallons. That's one area we're losing money at. But from what I found, I questioned as to why we stopped it at 10,000 gallons. What was explained to me was in the event a person was filling a pool or something like that, they didn't get charged sewage based upon a water rate. But if you'll look at that second column on the number of customers, for example, on page 4, and just add your numbers above 10,000 gallons, and that's several people. When you've got 662 total customers, there's several people. It's gonna be a fraction, maybe 20 or 30 people, 40 people, but that adds up. Same thing on the residential sewer outside the city limits. It goes to 10,000 gallons, and then it just stops. Anything above 10,000, there's no charge on, but there was like only 3 people for that. The option 3 is the same values for the water, with an increase of 5% for every additional $1,000 gallons, and then it bumped up the minimum usage of sewage charge from 10,000 to 15,000. So, whereas a residential person was paying $23 for the first 2,000 gallons, they will continue paying the $23 per 2,000 gallons, but when you get above the 2,000 gallons, it's, instead of it being $5 per 1,000 gallons, it's gonna be $5.25 per 1,000 gallons. The same thing on the, commercial. Each one of those were calculated out with 5% above the each additional 1,000 gallons was, increased to 5%. And then if you go across the columns, there's the options of 5, 8, or 10% increase on those as well. Or you can choose to leave it at no increase, that's y'all's call. Randy asked me to get aggressive as far as on what numbers to try to put down here. I was trying to think of the citizens as well, but in comparison to other cities, we're still lower than so many other cities are with their water and sewer rates. On option 4, it's a similar situation. It does include the 5% increase on the 1,000 gallons used after your first 2,000 gallons. And it increases the sewer rate, the sewer usage up to 20,000 gallons instead of the 10,000. So I can pull it up on the spreadsheet if y'all want to look at it on the laptop, or I can, any questions that you have on it. The summary sheet on the top is just basically a recap of what could be potentially estimated for an increase, knowing that each one of those numbers are going to change from each month because of your usage. I don't know with the winter months coming up, if we'll have as much water usage as we did in the summer months, because a lot of people are watering the yards and things of that type. The water usage would probably go down some, which means the sewer usage would go down some, but, we casually discussed, the mayor and I discussed the fact, well, we don't want to do a 2% or 3% this year and then turn around and have them come back and do another 2 or 3% next year or, from thereafter. So, if it's confusing what I have, I apologize. I'm just trying to give you some numbers to look at.
There were a lot of numbers to look at.
Just looking
What we put out here does not make up for the shortfall that we have in the city budget. I had a difficult time imagining any other higher rates than that, even though, as Tina said, our rates are still in line with the other municipalities. But there are probably other things that you have to look at as well. And as I said last week, perhaps before, there are no sacred cows here. Everything is on the table. We have to get in a better position than we are now. Go ahead, sir.
The only
There's a
thing
bug flying around. He
The
may
only
be
thing
on
I
your
can
head.
say as far as, the numbers that were identified on the budget, it's been discussed with me that in the past, numbers on the budget paperwork were showing to be in the negative, but we were able to work it out because we managed to manipulate payments each month. And that's what we've done since I've been here. We manage our manipulation of payments each month. But there's gonna come a time, as I've mentioned to Randy, we just keep getting higher and higher and higher on our numbers on paper being the opposite direction as they need to be. It's going to eventually, if it hasn't already caught up with us, the fact that everything else has increased like we've already discussed, but the fact too that our rates they are lower than a lot of other people's. We, if I understand correctly, the last increase was like in 2020 and it was strictly on commercial. They went up $1, I think, on their base fee. And I think there may have been a minor increase on something in 19. I think it was maybe something on the residential. But,
It's like we said last week, we're not gonna see a great windfall for us increasing it
No,
immediately.
you never will. You can see the numbers here, and that's approximately what they're gonna do.
Yeah. But
and I'm open for any suggestions if someone wants to throw another angle. I have battled with numbers and spreadsheets and trying to look at the citizens aspect of things, I know right now we have some citizens that have a difficult time paying their water and sewer bill as it is. They end up getting cut off, which ends up costing them more money because they don't make it in by a certain time. And I really struggled with the fact of not, you know, that we'd even have to consider an increase, period, because you think of those type of people that own fixed incomes and things of that type. But
And going forward through the year, even if, when you pass whatever your choice is for the budget, we're gonna continue to have to tweak how we operate.
Yes, I talked to Cypress Bank and Lone Star State Bank, and Blue Cast, you can pay your bill at Lone Star State Bank, and by County Water, you can pay your bill at Cypress Bank. And they do not charge Blue Cast or by County Water, believe it or not. Lone Star State Bank, if you're a customer of the bank, they don't charge you. If you're not a customer, they charge you $3. Cypress Bank has a similar arrangement. So that's something that could be considered.
in reference, and in what way, Cody? If you,
So like in water and sewer, there's $15,000 there, at least, in salaries required to, you know, have people there where you can pay your bill. So, you know, if someone retires or other decisions are made, you know, that's something that can be considered. That's the same reason Bowie Cass did it, you know. When they had someone here at this office for years and years, and when she retired, they made an arrangement with Lone Star State Bank, and it doesn't cost them anything.
well, in the respect of, is it okay as far as the thing that we discussed with Jamie? Ms. Karen's talking about retirement, and Jamie has considered for us, when we put her on full-time, she's going to do both positions as far as on the court and the water and sewer, which would be a reduction in salary at that time, as far as on fees going out. At least for a period of time, to kind of go for a trial and error basis to see if one person can handle both, which, I don't know for sure, but Ms. Karen's kicked around retiring at the end of the year. And then it may be in mid next year, I don't really know for sure, because she fluctuates on that, but
And we're gonna have to evaluate that function.
And those options could be considered even if it's not part of making a cut. If it's an arrangement similarly where it doesn't cost you anything,
Mhm.
and they're open at lunch as well, which is more convenient.
well, I know there's a lot of times I'll let people in at lunch when I'm here, when I'm working at the office, or especially the elderly people, so they don't have to come back out, you know, back out and everything. But
If we're gonna run it, after this, I'm sorry, I interrupted you. If we're going to run that office with 2 people versus originally having 3, sounds like something to consider.
I've often said that it needed to be open through lunch.
I think at one point we had 4 people.
I've never known it to have 4, not since I've been here.
I think we had kind of the police secretary. So I mean, they would have had to take part of that payment for the bill.
Right.
But if you did go ahead and talk to those banks that are in town at least, and, you know, people could, if they're both going on, they could decide, and it might slowly transition that people prefer to pay it that way. It was more convenient for them, or whatever.
I think it sounds like an option. I think all options have to be considered, the pros and cons. But I see us, at least in the foreseeable future, based on what I heard today in that meeting. I'm not seeing a Hail Mary down the road, getting other businesses in here from what I heard in our meeting with US Steel. So we're gonna have fewer people doing more, probably. That's been a fact of life for many people who have been in a number of industries, experienced it down the road. I would carefully consider everything, because we're working for the city, the people of the city, And just gonna, just read a little something, and this is, this was along the fact I picked it up at our neighborhood store. They were, a few comments about the city okaying their new budget and tax rate in Longview. And when I read it, you could relate to where they are. Since some of those prioritizing included boosting public safety, implementing competitive pay, increasing road maintenance, litter pickup, abandoned structure demolition, and providing citywide customer service training. Sounds familiar. They note that they had difficulty trying to pass it through because all city councilmen have some of that project that they want to put through, and it has merit. You can only do so much. They noted, and I'm paraphrasing on this, they noted in the article, and I'll let you have this if you want it, that they ran $1 million deficit last year. They passed a bond issue for $1.9 million because their pension fund was broke for the firemen. That's a increase in taxes as well. And they were just commenting on what they went through to get there. But one of the things that I looked at, and this caught my eye, and I thought this has to be a typo. It said the property tax rate for 2022-2023 was approved Thursday at 57.89 cents per $100 valuation. If you consider what our tax rate is, that's pretty significant.
Taxes are high in Longview.
Yeah, I mean, they have a lot of amenities, I've got that,
Mhm.
but we're all in the same boat, we're struggling to create enough cash flow to keep things going in a proper manner. And it doesn't matter if you're Lone Star or Ore City or Longview or where you are, council members are grappling with that. So I go back to, anytime anybody comes up with an idea, please consider it, because if it saves us money, if we can carry on with the amenities that our population wants us to give them, then
We sold the
Dennis
property in Longview.
it what?
I said, we had a property in Longview. We were paying very high taxes on
You
it.
said 57 cents per 100.
57.89, 57.89.
Yep. Yeah,
That sounds astronomical.
it
compared
was
to what we're
horrible.
talking
And we're,
But anyway.
We're .473 is what we proposed.
about. Yeah. It's only just a little tidbit while we struggle through this.
Mhm.
Tina and I have run these numbers, and she's gotten with me constantly between these meetings. I've got a stack of paper on options. We tried to run it, we'd run an option, and we'd throw it down and go, no, that's not good. And we just kept going and going and going, and ended up with these last four for you guys to consider. Quite frankly, again, this is gonna have to be voted on tonight.
Mhm.
And if y'all don't like something that you see there, I will run another spreadsheet and we'll plug numbers in as we go along. You'll have to be specific on what you want me to change and plug in.
I know we don't want to go up on anything. It makes it hard on every citizen in Lone Star. But if we have not gone up on the water and sewer since what?
This is not an emotional issue,
But
this is an issue of looking at
numbers,
static results.
exactly. I think we don't have a choice but to go up some on the water and sewer. I don't make a drastic increase, but
You're gonna have,
I need
you're
other
gonna have to make
opinion.
an increase that's enough to make a footprint
Yes,
out there that
exactly.
deals with some of the issues that you've got a cash flow problem right now.
Yes. I need somebody.
But you
else
can't
to-
tax everybody to death either. I mean,
No.
I'm sympathetic to both sides of it.
Exactly. And I understand that there are people out there that can't pay their water bill, but on the other side of that, the sweepstakes parking lots are full.
Well, we're gonna look at down the road we're gonna have to look at incorporating some areas into the city where we can, where we may get more revenue. You're a little bit limited on what you can do, but it's something we need to pursue. This is gonna be ongoing. This is just where we are right now, but you have other things you need to consider.
I spoke with the man that owns RT's. He's closing his business side, but he's keeping his sweepstakes open because that's what's making him money. Yeah, and he's been in business here in Lone Star for how many years? Long time, and he was making a living at it.
Here we are.
I looked at the comptroller's website for the sales tax collections, and it said a little over 8% increase since that period last year. So I don't know if you adjusted the sales tax numbers any after we talked about them last time. But I think that's probably a 3-month period.
As far as,
The collection period that they were citing. I mean, that's how often you pay your sales tax, mostly. Well, some people do it month to month, some people do it once a year. The typical is every 3 months. So it was like, I think 8.25% over that pay period last year, which is probably maybe keeping up with inflation, or, so essentially the same sales as the prior year. Because we have a pretty good projected reduction in sales tax income.
based upon the budget that I showed you guys, you're talking about, it was based upon the numbers that I had, and we have had some reduction on it, but, there's not a whole lot of business here to buy from, per se. It might, like I said last week, with all of our other numbers, I might can come up with another $8,000 to $10,000, but I didn't want to go and say, hey, we're gonna get $10,000 more on this, and then next year come along and we only got 3,000,
It's listed at 22,000 less than the previous year. Hopefully it's not that bad. Because based on just the prior pay period, which I'm really not sure, maybe the last 3 months, I kind of think it should be higher nominally. But it should be higher than last year nominally.
Okay, I had given you guys, one of the reports where it was showing you actually real numbers up through August, or I'm sorry, up through July. I actually went above our 9 months so that I could have more truer numbers.
How much do we typically take in a year on fines or ordinance violations?
That's gonna fluctuate. Right now, we're not gonna be getting anything on ordinance violations, more than likely, because we don't have an ordinance officer.
But all the police enforce ordinances.
I'm sorry?
All of the police enforce ordinances though, right?
That's the problem, we need to redo them, because our ordinances, the fees we charge for stuff are, might as well say they're non-existent, and redo them, we need to redo that structure.
On one of the profit loss reports that I did back up through August the 11th. I gave true numbers on taxes. Let me make sure. And you're talking about sales tax?
Yeah, that was on, it was dated 8/25, looked like this on the front. It is a sales tax for the 22-20 budget, it is $125,000.
That's what I get for giving y'all too much data. I got the same data.
I've got too many papers.
And the prior year was $147,000, so $22,000 difference, a reduction in sales tax.
Okay, as of October 1 of 2020 through August the 11th,
Yeah, this one I'm looking at.
I had, 116,000. I bumped it up based upon historically we get around 10,000. I bumped it up to 125. Because if you'll notice at the 9-month amount, it's 103, which is typically what we base our numbers on, a 9-month period. But because our numbers were so low and because I was trying so hard to try to get true numbers accurate, back on August the 11th, I had $116,000 that had come in, on sales tax. Let me see if I can get in there now and see if we got any more.
My question is, why are we jumping to that when we're trying to figure out what we want to do with it?
Just trying to process
Just
information.
trying to see what else we want. And like I said, I mean, we might, this was through August, we do have another month. I mean, that's why I was projecting 125,000.
Mm-hmm.
It's possible that this next month, we may get more than what I anticipated, and it may bump us up.
You had mentioned a reduction in garbage customers since 2020, I believe. Someone mentioned that. Is that the case? Or water, sewer, garbage customers?
And that we have had some, but
A
lately,
few, but not.
Not significant.
okay. We had higher than normal to come in August. We had 14,000 our portion for the city, so as of right now, that will bump us up, so that will be more, we're showing that 130, 965. Like I told y'all the other day, I was being conservative on that. So right now, we're up at that, that's gonna be another,
Yeah, is that through August?
That's through August.
$25,000?
I'm sorry?
Like $25,000?
We've already got,
If
we've already
we
got
get that-
August numbers in?
812 is when I got it. We got 14,918, which we were running anywhere between 10, 11, and 12. In August, we got an increase. We don't normally get that. That's why I was bumping it up 10,000 for each month. But we had 116 based upon y'all's report, on the one that you were looking at, Cody, dated, on the 25th, it's showing 125. The original one that was showing, that I had up through August 11th at that time, was running 116,000. So I bumped it up another 10,000, not sure. I probably should have bumped it up 20,000, which would put us at 136. But I didn't want to over speculate based on that.
And you're basing that on a 12-month average, is that right?
I'm basing it on real numbers.
Okay.
Yeah. Because our numbers. And I just lost them. We were running 10,000, 10,000, 12,000, and then August bumps up at 14,000. So I'm saying, I don't want to speculate stating that we're gonna have 10, 12,000, and we come in and get 8. On this, we under speculate, we got 14.
But it starts in October, right, for that year, for the
Yes.
budgeted year?
Yes.
So I don't understand what you mean it's based on real numbers.
I'm going based upon my numbers that I've received in actually each month, and then trying to build from that so that I can try to get as close to a true picture. Because if I go back in and base it upon the average, like on last year's history, it may or it may not match up. So I was trying to carry it all the way up through, at the time, it was up through August 11th, when I bumped it up to the 125,000 on one of my work copies. And I didn't anticipate it coming in at 14, because we don't normally have it at 14. We're more common to have it at 10,000. So if y'all happen to have your,
So even if it's 139.65 right now, and you bring in another $10,000, that's gonna put you at 141,000. If you get 10,000 in September.
if I get 10,000, yes.
Yeah, if you speculate you're gonna get 10,000, then that's gonna put you up to 149.65.
And that will help the general fund out significantly when we're, based on our true numbers, we're at 20 at deficit now.
And so that's the real numbers for 21, 22, and then for 22, 23, you are projecting it to be similar or the same, is that?
But I'm basing it off of our current years.
Yeah.
And,
Okay.
because I mean, we've got our 2021 already there. And my computer just crashed.
It was 130. 2021 was 130,000. Right.
Yes, those are real numbers that came in. And when I ran this, like I said, for us to look at, October through June was 103. At the time, I did not have August when I did my last one. So I was speculating based upon the number that I had up through August the 11th, which the number got posted apparently on the 12th or 13th. I didn't have this 14,000.
So like when you're looking at the 9-month
Mhm.
and then you're projecting the last 3 months, are you just taking an average and then adding 3 more, or are you looking at the historical?
I've got a
last
formula
months?
in my spreadsheet that goes based upon the average of each month. It takes your first 9 months and it
Mhm.
gives you a total of the average of those months. And it gives you, based upon those numbers, it tells you what the projection is for the next 3. So then I go in and look at that.
Okay.
And that's what,
Because the comptroller's website, when I looked at it today, it shows for this prior period last year, because like last August is the place to look for this August, it was September, back to school, Thanksgiving, Christmas shopping for sales tax, so, like I said, the comptrollers for the last pay period said it was an 8% increase, so it ought to be, more than last year, at least in the numbers. And I believe it said over year to date, it was less than 8%, but still above the previous year. It had it listed year to date compared to the previous year to date, and last pay period compared to the previous year's similar pay period.
well, as of right now, through August the 12th, we know that we can bump up that last budget on sales tax where I had 125,000. We know that we can bump it up to at least 130 plus projected maybe another 10,000. So that would be 140. That's gonna bring you, I'm getting my computer straight up. That'll bring our deficit in general fund, up.
Is this deficit on page 5, negative 20,000, is that what we're?
Yep. Yep, 20,000, yes.
You know, I thought we'd still also quickly from, this, public works fire hydrant repair and maintenance, $8,000, we plugged that in, cause that's what we need to be getting from the water district, if we spent that money correct on repairs to fire hydrants and stuff. Remember we talked about, probably gonna be able to spend anyway, Shane, and then we talked about that, about being so high, so that 8,000 is probably not gonna be spent. We've averaged, what, 1,500
Right.
last 2 years?
Yeah.
Well, there's $6,500 right there.
But historically, we've always put it in there because
I understand we put it
because
in there.
if we were to get it,
Sure,
if we have to pay it out of our pocket,
yes, and I'm an advocate of getting it all the way, you know that, but there's not anything that we can buy that's gonna get us there that we're gonna have the money for. But the way it looks like, we're not gonna have that money to buy anything to get us there this next year too, so. I'm just saying, I'm not saying,
Well, the
I'm
thing
just saying
about-
that's another 8,000 or 7,000 you're playing with right there. Not saying take it out, I'm just saying if you're playing with numbers, that's another
And we can-
$7,000.
if y'all wanna take it out, we can take it out. I mean, like I said, that's gonna, between the 14,000 we got on taxes that we know of that we've got now, since the last, I did not rerun that this year, tonight.
Even if you cut it in half, I mean, in the first 9 months, October 21 to June 22, we only spent $500. Before that, we spent nothing in 2 years. According to what Shane and I have been talking about, there's nothing we can buy that's gonna be able to be under the 8,000 for us to get reimbursed the 8,000. It's basically a wash.
Right.
So, I'm just saying, even if you cut that in half to 4,000, then you've almost covered your deficit because you reduced that by 4, that would be 16. Plus, if you're gonna get another 15 from sale tax, then you're down to $1,000 deficit. Just off what we have here now, that's not talking about amount of what all that's not talking about, but.
Say if you break even on your general fund, we still got the big hit on water and sewer. And
And it's gonna, that water and sewer is gonna continue to grow as far as the deficit goes year after year after
How's that
year because of the interest.
yeah, we didn't, in the past, we didn't care for that interest very well.
So if you
As far
take,
as cushion.
let's just, for instance, just just right off the top of your head, if you take the top number off the 10% on option 4, it says estimated annual increase of 78,255.70. What's that gonna help us? I'm asking a question, because we're grasping at straws here to talk about everything. That's
Well,
just,
the way I look at it, based upon since I've been here and the way I understand it had been done in the past, it would help us have a little bit longer from one month to the next to take care of the bills. You're not gonna recoup it all, what you need. And it's like I was telling Randy, I tried every way I know of to keep from hitting the citizens.
I know. And I'm a citizen too, I don't know what you did.
But is it gonna help you pay bills every month?
I mean, it gets harder and harder on fixed income to make it, but
Oh, I know.
I also understand what we're facing. And I would much rather have to pay more taxes than I would not be so sure that we have a functioning sewer. That's just my opinion.
Christopher, you tried to speak a moment ago, would you like to speak?
It was on a topic a long time ago.
Okay.
Doesn't matter.
So Rudy, in your opinion, option 4, at the 10%.
I'm asking because
Well,
I
that's
don't
kind
see,
of, I'm wanting opinions, that's.
option 2, option 3 is 78,178. Option 4 is, I'll put my piece of paper down, what, 70?
78,755.
So you're talking $600 difference for the year between the two options.
Mhm.
But now, again, that's if you increase your sewage up from 10 to
I
20,000.
understand that. I'm talking bottom line. Between option 3 and option 4, you're talking $600. So if you wanna go with option 3, that's okay too, but, you know, if you look at it, hell, look at option 2, it's 75,899, so between 3 options, you're dealing with what, $3,000?
But you're talking about going 10%.
I'm asking, I don't see any other way to do it. You know, I don't like it. I don't like it because I have to pay it too, but I don't know how do you do it other than that? You know?
What is the hole in water and sewer?
I'm sorry?
What is the deficit in water and sewer?
Well, based upon these numbers, it's gonna be that last. I know in talking to Miss Ruth, when you take out the depreciation expense, it'd be a negative 65,860.
Where's the,
That's gonna be in your package from last week, page 3,
August 22nd?
25th.
the 25th.
What has it been in previous years?
The previous year was 142 in the red, and that's where what's been explained to me on paper, it looks worse than what it actually is, but I think that analogy is catching up with us because you're not having offsetting revenue to keep you from going.
So if it was 142 in the red the previous year, what happened? I didn't remember.
You mean when you go up?
No, if it was 142 in the red,
That's what I'm saying, that's where it comes across without the fact is it's shown to be in red on paper. Because if you look back well, like right now, October 21 to June of 22, it's 136 in the red. If you look back in October the 19th to September 20th, it showed to be 86,000 in the red. But where it throws you off, making it look good, was in 2020 and 2021 final. It showed you 394,000 in black, but that's because we had grant money that got shown up in there.
Mhm.
That was not something that the city got to spend on our bills. It got paid toward grant money. It was
Mhm.
project specific, so that's a little it can be misleading to think that we went from negative to a big significant increase down to another big negative.
Which page is that on the 25th handout?
Page 3.
Okay. So that bottom row shows it being in the black that one year, right?
Right, because
But up there, under net operating income, it doesn't account for that
those numbers, that grant,
grant, so it's
yeah,
better to look at that than it is with the grant.
it is.
And
And if
so
you look at that, you're 268 showing in the red versus 287 this year.
in 2019-20, it showed negative 251,000 in the red. And then the next year it was negative 268,000. And then the next year it was negative 263. And then we have budgeted negative 287. So I don't, like, if we're $300,000 in the red, we were almost $300,000 in the red these other years too, so I don't understand that.
And that's where I'm saying, based upon what I was told, everybody says, you know, it shows to be in the red on paper. All I can say is, since I've been here, from 1 month to the next, I have to hold checks to pay bills. I have to, you know, hold the accounts and make sure which ones I pay. If we had a plus or a extra buildup of money, I wouldn't have to be holding checks.
Just a quick note on holding checks. When do we pay the police payment?
February,
Let's don't ever hold that one.
I'm sorry,
Let's don't hold that one.
I'm not.
Right.
No.
I mean, that.
No, that
that's-
check is, that
that's
check
gotta-
comes out of the
yeah.
first,
That's gotta be a priority in paying that one.
tax. Yeah, that comes out of our taxes. I hold paying off on something else. I pay bills
And they're
that are
due.
gonna have, late fees on them. I get those bills paid as quickly as can so that we don't incur any late fees. If there's something that comes in that we can get by without paying maybe a couple, 3 days late, that we don't get charged on, those are the ones that I pay a little bit later. Because $35 on 4 or 5 bills that have late fees, that's a waste of our money. So I try my best to make sure anything I know that's gonna have a potential late fee charged on it, they get paid first. And then I may have the checks written out and have the ladies to sign them, but I'll put a date on them saying that it's due by this date, and I'll have it mailed in, therefore it won't be late. But since I've been here, and even since, I believe when Devin was here, she had to do the same thing. The money don't come in, it just staggers in, you know, it doesn't come in all at one time. You get your water and sewer bills, they come in up to the 20th, 22nd, or whatever. You usually do the first part of the month, but I mean, it tapers off. Then you have those people that don't pay their bill, period. That has gotten better though, because
We've enforced the
yeah,
payments.
we've enforced the fact that if people don't get paid by a certain time, they get the water cut off. And if they get it cut off, they have to pay for it, everything, all fees and everything before it gets turned back on. Whereas in the past,
We didn't
I think they
enforce
were paying maybe a portion of it and allowing them to, and then some of those people would skip town and then we wouldn't get that money.
I think his question worded a different way, and I apologize.
I'm sorry if I misunderstood it.
If we have 250,000 plus deficit every year, how do we not start the next year 250,000 in debt? Is that an accurate way of stating that?
Maybe that's part of.
I can't answer that question. I mean, I really can't. I mean,
So there's something wrong with the number if you say you don't have enough to cover the bills according to the budget, and then at the end of the year, all the bills eventually get paid, and you're not 250,000 in the hole, then something's not right.
well, based upon these numbers, they come directly out of QuickBooks based upon our payments, our deposits and our payments, okay? So we've got our income and our expenses that are going in and out, and these numbers are captured exactly, I mean, these numbers, there's none of these numbers that I supplied you here that were manually calculated. These are coming out of QuickBooks calculations. So, because that was one of the things we thought maybe we had an issue with it, I've gone back through manually, looked at lines, thinking of the formulas, maybe there was a hiccup with the formula. And so, instead of using one of the old spreadsheets and utilizing those formulas, because I didn't know how they were extracted, I went to QuickBooks, downloaded a whole new report, saved that report, and then started detailing going through the formulas. Well, I trust QuickBooks better than I would on my calculations with all those modified formulas.
Then I would suggest that possibly you have a deficit carryover in the starting numbers that have been just passed along year after year, which by this point are probably not valid.
Yeah, throughout the years, multiple.
Right.
Yeah.
And
And which
just
has
do that
caused,
accounting backwards.
which has caused a very bad, how do I put that?
What I'm saying is that number may not be real.
Exactly. I agree with you.
I write accounting software for a living, and I believe you're an accountant at some point, I don't know, I thought of something like that. If you start with a negative number at the top of your ledger, you're gonna end with a negative number, even if you, input and output's the same throughout the time period. I suggest that maybe this is a carried over number year after year after year, which is not valid, which means if you're gonna hit the citizens with all that debt that doesn't really exist, then that's a problem.
So how do you clear that debt?
Well,
It's not a debt, it's a fake
I
number.
know, I understand that,
Yeah.
but I'm saying, do you just start
the only thing I can say on that,
fiscal year?
There's 4 years that are shown in this. I crossed the 9 months out because I can't think that way. And it looks like the sky is falling in all 4 years.
Mhm.
So, and you look how bad the sky is falling from the first year, the oldest year listed, 1920, call that year 0. The next year, it's 18,000 worse. The next year, it's 13,000 worse than year 0, not than year 1. And then this year, it's 37,000 worse.
I guess what I'm
Then
asking,
you're
is
zero.
if you think that's an imaginary number, and we start from the beginning of one fiscal year to the other, in and out, exclude your negative number, and you will give your actual number. I mean, if you think if it's a carryover negative number.
but
Maybe something like that.
You have to put
Basic-
a ledger correction in there.
based upon what's in QuickBooks, the numbers that we've got identified, and I understand what you're saying, if you start out negative, you're gonna be carrying that forward. But these numbers are based upon true numbers from 9 months to 9 months is where we're at the time. That's why it's hard to speculate how to judge your budget, how you're gonna do your budget, because you have to go based upon your history. Plus, like I said, when you were talking earlier, we've got a monthly calculation based upon your 9 months. If you've used X amount, if you've spent X amount of dollars in 9 months, then you use that as a base, divide it by the 9 months, and calculate that out times 12 to get your yearly expense. And then that's where you go in and budget your numbers based upon what your 9-month history is. Because of it being so tight and the numbers being so upside down this year, I went ahead and tried to get as much as I could up until August the 11th. Okay, on the sales tax deal, like I said, couldn't have captured the fact that we were gonna get $14,000 more. So going in and modifying that on the spreadsheet now, if we did that, it would. We're at 130,965 right now.
My thought process is if we were actually in this big a hole, it seemed like to me the auditor would go crazy.
Well, the auditors did tell me, y'all have got to find
Oh, I
some way to
understand
get
that,
money.
I understand that, but I mean, if we'd have been in a hole, $200,000 hole for 3 or 4 years,
We may have a
they'd have been
revised,
shooting themselves in here and pulling out their hair at the same time, you know what I'm saying?
we may have a revised audit next month.
Yeah, he sent a letter to me that he's gonna look at, that you contacted him. I'm waiting for the paperwork to come in on that.
Please let me know if they try to charge us for that.
I don't think they will, because of what we've already paid. I would be totally surprised, and I think he probably,
I would sue them if they tried to charge us for their guys' audit.
I don't think they will.
I don't think they will either.
Okay, so, and where was, Rita, you remember off the top of your head, oh, that's water and sewer, I'm sorry. I was trying to capture the 8,000, that's on water and sewer. If we put the additional 14,000 in and roughly calculate at, say, another 10,000 for September, or say 12,000, that's gonna have us 2,300 some odd dollars in the red still on general fund,
How much again?
around 2,300.
Now, that doesn't take into effect, take off any of the 8,000 for the hot fire hydrant.
But that's water and sewer.
Okay.
That's what I was looking for here, yeah.
It's,
So if we based upon, say, if we for some reason or other get another 14,000 in like we did this month, for whatever reason for the increase, then that would put us in the black based upon the numbers on
And
paper.
my personal thought process on that is we probably won't, because Rocky Point is not open every day, and you're not gonna have that kind of revenue coming in every day. Now, that's just,
Well,
I could be wrong.
Like I said, I pulled the numbers out of QuickBooks, just talking about it here.
Now,
Your numbers are,
here's,
you run 10,000, in October of last year, we were 10,666, November, we were 11,625, December, we were 10,789, January, we were 11, and it goes on like that, and all of a sudden, but I couldn't have speculated to have gotten $14,000 in August, because every month is 10, 11, and barely 12. And then all of a sudden, August comes along and we got 14.9. We couldn't, and that may have to do with Rocky Point. 'Cause
I don't know, I'm
you just
speculating, I
saying-
don't have a clue.
I'm just saying if it were, you couldn't have speculated to have gotten that, because I don't think we had it like that last year.
what do they charge sales tax on there? Drinks,
Food.
services?
Food. Maybe.
What was the question?
I said, what do they charge sales tax on? Food and drink?
I don't know if they do,
Alcohol.
they probably do drink, I don't know about food.
I would think
Well-
they'd have to,
They may, yeah,
you'd
they,
have to pay taxes.
I
if you
don't
go
know
to
how
the
it's
store.
structured, but I don't think they would. And of course, this month, they've had, the last 3 or 4 weeks, they've had that karaoke thing where they're bringing people in, they've got a lot of people down there over the weekend, so I'm not even speculating what
I
they
have
do.
a comment, but
On the Rocky Point thing, this is not a diss on them at all.
No, I understand.
I would suggest that the income we get from Rocky Point is a drop in the bucket compared to what we get from Amazon. You know, it's bad that we don't have businesses here, but it's great that we get the online revenues, because for me, I'm not spending gas to go to Longview every time I need a roll of toilet
Yeah,
paper or a popsicle.
and that's a good point, Keith, in the fact that I'm not sure, I haven't figured out yet, or maybe it's just me, and I haven't figured out if there's a way we can go out there and pull that information out to find out how much we actually get from them on that kind of stuff. Because one of the biggest things is, and you just mentioned it, is if we, even though we don't have hard storefront stuff, if we could attract some more of those kind of businesses, then we're not hurting ourselves while we're still trying to do what we need to do. You know what
I
I'm
don't
saying?
think they'll ever compare from the tax revenue
No.
we get from Amazon and Walmart.com and
And eBay.
Lowe's.com.
Right.
on eBay.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, so I
My
mean,
husband is the king.
and I, like I say, it's nothing, I just don't know the methodology where to pull that information out.
Okay, as far as on general fund, if we go in, if I calculated up, add another, say 12,000 for our sales tax, and where we're at right now, and I didn't make y'all copies of all this, but you should have paperwork on that last packet. It's gonna be on page 1 of 6. If we increase the sales tax from 125, rough estimate at 142,000. And it is got the fire hydrant repair in this, reduced it down to 4,000, it'll be 717.90 in the black.
717?
Yeah.
Hey, now. Let me put-
And again, this falls under the fact that it is paper,
Right. Well, and all this,
And-
basically all this is all trying to get it narrowed. So now let me throw a kink in the works. Does that include anything about the police officer we've been talking about? What does that do to us? Makes us,
Well, you got another 30-something thousand.
if we hire full-time,
42.
if we hire part-time, how's that gonna affect us?
You gonna talk about a regular policeman or ordinance officer?
I would like to have a combination, but I don't think you're gonna find somebody like that.
Because we need an ordinance
Well,
officer.
I told you what my opinion was on that, we can discuss that later. I think, we can get help from other cities to help us with that, and
Well, can we pay other cities for an ordinance officer on a contractual basis?
I'll have to find out, I haven't talked to them about that.
I have a question. Can all police officers enforce ordinances?
Yes, sir.
Right, that's what I was,
Under their badge. If you're not a T-code certified police officer, you have to go through the code enforcement school.
okay.
But you could, like as a certified peace officer, if you're working for an agency, you can work under your badge without being a,
But all three of y'all are T-Cole certified.
yes, sir.
So what types of ordinances or violations can they not do without that in school? What is the limitation?
There's none.
None at all.
None.
If they're T-Cole certified.
That was
Yes,
my
sir.
understanding, that's fine. So, now, question is,
But don't,
don't butt me, just tell me. I mean, you can say what you wanna say, and then you start throwing caveat on it, but, no, it's either this way or it's
are
that
you
way.
gonna try to make our workload harder than what it is now?
If you hire a part-time officer, will it?
Depends. I mean, you talking about part-time, the city usually only pays like $12 an hour. We never hire somebody part-time for that.
I don't know, I just think, just management strategy in general, a town this size, you don't wanna specialize. So like, all the police officers would enforce an ordinance as they needed to, rather than one person just does ordinances, one person just does animals.
Right.
Well, it's a job, Mr. Walman. Code enforcement is a job. You have to stay on top of it.
I mean, it could be a full-time person's job. Where our situation before, we had a code enforcement officer plus a water and sewer certified individual. So we used him on both sides, and also animal control.
If you want to, you can come by tomorrow and I'll show you all the files and stuff. There's, cause you have to follow up on everything you do. Basically be in the ordinance book, the law. It's a job.
You can get certified.
We are gonna have to be more aggressive in that area.
The one thing, little income here and there when we mow the yards for these, properties that people don't live here, we can send them a letter and they have to pay us for that. We have not been successful in some people paying that, so we're gonna have to lien on the property. Well, you have to have someone that's certified to put that lien. I couldn't just go and do it, I don't think, where we're looking on history, you have to have a certified officer to do it.
And the ordinances have to be fixed.
Yeah,
We all know.
We all know that.
That's on the hit list. But I apologize, I'm not running the general fund, account again, because I did not realize that we had gotten that extra 14,000.
that's okay, well, we're just
But
talking about.
if we did do the 14, I increased the 14,000, the general fund on the, sales tax, I appreciate Cody bringing that up because it made me dig into it again. Lately, I'm just trying to figure out what we can do for water and sewer. But if we currently at 139.65, if we're got 12,000, put us at, I just rounded it up to 142. And like I said, we did cut the fire hydrant because unless we completely disconnect, we don't have, unless they authorize us to use another function.
Well, and the thing about it is if we have the opportunity to do that, and we have to pay for it, that money will be reimbursed to us, so it's an in and an out, it's not like we're spending that money.
But you have to do it. within a
Yes,
certain
I
time.
understand, I'm just, yeah.
So I did reduce that down to 4,000, and like I said, with that being done on those two different transactions, it'll take us 717.90 in the black. And I have saved that as a different file, so I'll have it available, I can send it to y'all, whatever. But back to what y'all were discussing earlier about the negatives coming in from previous. These numbers aren't carried over from QuickBooks as a negative type thing, they're populated from month to month and then from year to year, and they're supported by transactions. So they're gonna be true numbers in here based on this, but for the life of me, I cannot figure out why the on the paper is as it is, but based upon history, we continuously get worse and worse going in the red on paper. And my biggest fear, like I expressed to Randy, when you, based upon numbers, you continue to do that, it's gonna be in the red someday, whether you're holding checks or not. It's inevitable, it's going to be in the red. We can't continuously go based upon our numbers. And again, that's based upon projections on our expenses. These numbers, in comparison to some of the previous years, we did not utilize all the money that we projected to use based on the previous year's history. And then some of them, like I told the guys, in accounting, to me, you put your charges where they best fit based on what you're purchasing and what your expense is. If it throws you into the negative outside of your budget and you actually spend it there, to me, that's where you do it too, so you can adjust for it the next year. I don't put money from one account because it's in the red and charge it to another account. My accounting skills don't do that. That's not true colors. So if we're going to be in the red on telephones and stuff like that, we'll be in the red based on true bills. I'm not gonna pull the telephone bill and put it in general. I won't do that. I've got an identified account for certain bills, and if I don't have an identified account, then those are the types of account or items that will go into the general expense. But if I've got a specified account on it, I do not share it to that account to keep it from being in the red. It is what it is, because you have to base your next year's numbers off of true numbers. So, water and sewer.
So what's gonna make it, so how are we gonna make it easier for you to pay bills every month?
We gotta have more money coming in.
So does that
And we
mean,
got, we gotta have revenue coming in and less expenses going out. This year, like I said, we've had to buy tires for multiple vehicles, we've had to buy batteries for multiple vehicles. You don't think it adds up, but when you have what used to be an $89 or $99 battery is now costing you $156 or $176, you know,
Where do we get batteries?
over at, ABC.
what kind of
Either
batteries
ABC
for-
or vehicle batteries. The truck batteries that we had, they were 1-year batteries.
maybe we could do some shopping around for batteries? I might have,
We get a discount on them.
I might can get a bigger discount on them. I know somebody that has a company.
I'm all for discounts.
I would hate to look outside of the common taxing jurisdiction, but my last 1-year Walmart battery for $50 lasted 3 years. And it was American made, and the ones that are Riley's and ABC were not.
Now, these are American made.
Here we go.
Guaranteed American made.
I don't know, we're saying batteries for an example, I don't know why our batteries, I mean, they were 1-year batteries when we got them, and those trucks being so big, it drained those batteries down, so,
Got a lot of equipment, maybe that's, I don't know.
but we should be okay, 'cause I think the guys, when they get 3-year, I think they're 3-4 year.
I also had O'Reilly replace one with like a week left in the warranty, and just hand me a brand new battery.
Mhm.
And we do have it, this paper trail and stuff all over. But anyway,
But if we go up on our water bills, how much is that gonna help?
as I said before, every penny helps. But I am not, and y'all can throw stones at me, but I am not an advocate for going up to 10% on citizens,
Okay,
personally.
okay.
Because even though I don't live here, I know that we need the revenue, but you can't continuously just pop the people every year. And that's my personal opinion. I know y'all probably against me on saying that, but,
And we're not $287,000 in the red.
no,
So
we're
now
not,
I am.
No.
we're not, but we're not making it monthly, like I said.
That's why we called in Miss Ruth, but she could see it and tell them, and hoping she would pick up on some things we weren't seeing.
And when
Because
I
it wasn't making any sense.
When I discussed with her what I did, extracting it straight from QuickBooks, verifying the formulas, like I said, because when you get down to the bottom of these spreadsheets, you've got multiple, formulas that are referencing multiple cells at the top, you know, you're coming down and thinking, Lord, how does anybody keep up with this? And so that's why I started completely over, extracted straight from QuickBooks, downloaded them, verified those cells. I'm like, okay, these cells are not touched by me or anybody else. These are gonna be true and accurate because this is what QuickBooks is based off of, unless QuickBooks has an error. So, and that's why I say with the numbers we're using, we're getting them based on each month's bills and based on history. These numbers are true, with the exception until you go down at the bottom and you start adding the grants in and things of that type, then you can add them in for that particular account, but it's not gonna help the water sewer. It's gonna help that special case of whatever that grant was for.
So if we went up 5% to option 4,
You making a motion?
I'm asking her,
Oh, okay.
yeah, I'm asking Tina.
Okay. Quick question, I'll ask you a question.
Mhm.
How many gallons of sewer are you charged for? Roughly, do you have any idea?
I just know my water bill is like $65.
Okay. If you look at, again, I know we gotta look for the city, but I'm also looking at the citizens.
Mhm.
If you look at,
And there's just 2 of us, so, I mean,
on that page 4, on option 4,
mhm.
when you increase, look at the 20,
The
when it
5%.
comes to 20,000 gallons, you're gonna get $82.38. Whereas when it was at a 10,000 max, you're gonna be paying $48.28. Now, as a citizen, you're getting billed for 10,000 gallons now on water and sewer. And if you use 20,000 gallons, you're still getting charged $48.28. If we use option 4 and you use 20,000 gallons, you're now gonna get charged $82.38.
So my water bill's gonna go up.
Your sewer part will go up,
Mhm.
and if you go with option 4, your water's gonna, it depends on what option y'all choose on your water.
Mhm.
If you use the 5, 8, or 10%.
Mhm.
I'm throwing that out as far as in sewer to make sure everybody clearly understands.
Mhm.
Right now, everybody's paying a max of 10,000 gallons.
Mhm.
to look, and I don't understand why we have it at so low, but if you pay 15, if you, go to the max of 15,000, which is gonna be option 3,
Mhm.
you will be paying at 15,000 gallons on sewer, you'll be paying 65.33, whereas again, before you were paying 48.28 at 10,000 max.
And how many customers are represented there?
That is gonna be 662 customers, those are all. In looking at page 4 of option 3, those numbers on the left-hand side are the usage of, the customer usage based on the nearest 1,000 gallons for sewage. And you'll notice they go from 1,000 gallons all the way down to 80,000 gallons. When you get past 15,000 gallons, you'll see you've got 5 people at 15,000, 2 at 16, 2 at 17, 2 at 18, 6 at 19,000, and it goes on down. It onesies and twos you to death on those. It's not much, you don't think that's much money when it comes in,
Mhm.
but when you stop at 10,000 gallons, like, which is what we've been doing, and you only charge 48.28,
Mhm.
and if you went up another 5,000 gallons, you would be getting 65.33. As a citizen, you're not gonna like it, but as a city, you know, we're not making, why are we stopping at 10,000 gallons?
Mhm.
When you've got people that are getting 80,000 gallons of sewer, and I know sewer's not necessarily, a lot of it's gonna be just from your water, based on your water.
Mhm.
But 80,000, which would normally cost you 65.33 if you went to 15,000. If you went to the actual sewage rate versus the gallon calculated out, it was over $100 and something. If you actually calculate it based on the gallons used for sewage. But what was explained to me was, we don't charge as much on the sewage as you do for gallons of water, because a lot of times if people have a leak, or they are, watering their yard or whatever,
Mhm.
they're not actually
Using
contributing
sewer.
to sewage.
Right.
They're just using water, so you don't wanna jack it up too much, because you're paying for water that's going through sewage, and you're not really using sewage per se.
Mhm.
And that's what was explained to me as why we stopped at 10,000 gallons.
It's a real conundrum. So now I don't have an opinion.
That's what I'm saying, I mean, there's a reason why it was at 10,000 gallons in the past, but like I said, you've got people using 80,000.
Yeah.
Residential users?
Yes. Your commercial, let's see,
I sure don't wash that many clothes.
I think the idea is they don't either. That water is not going down the drain and we're not having to process it in our treatment plant.
Yeah.
So why would they pay more for
Right.
that?
and that's why I wanted to explain, I mean, you know, we can up it, or y'all can leave it where it's at, but I was asked to look at all different avenues. Now, if you're a commercial customer, you pay for your actual usage on sewage.
Mhm.
So the commercial customers have a sewage meter, or what? Oh, it's not a $10,000 max, is what you're saying,
It's not a 10,000 gallon
on
max.
commercial customers?
Yeah, it's based upon actual usage. Don't ask me why there's a difference. I mean, looking at this for the commercial sewer rates inside the city limits, all 57, and when you don't think you've got 57 commercial business in here, you don't. You've got several businesses with multiple water lines that they pay separately. And that calculates out as like a customer per se. But 20,000 gallons most. And that's $102.28 for 20,000. So,
I think this just went over my pay grade.
Well, like for a polycart, I know everyone does this, but why do commercial customers pay more for the same polycart?
That's a loaded question.
It is. That's what it is.
I can't answer that for you, Cody. I don't know.
Wastewater. I mean,
I don't have, garbage rates with me.
But that's a decision that the city makes, not, the trash company, right?
no, that's the trash company makes that decision.
I remember the conversations, but I can't recall. A lot of the commercial businesses though are gonna have dumpsters instead of polys.
But it's a different rate for the polycart.
Right, okay. I'll look into that. I don't
And
know.
it's that way in all the towns around. And I don't believe that the trash company charges a different rate. I think it's just every town decides, well, we can charge the business more. The same thing. Because what are they gonna do?
I'll look into that. So, as I said, the numbers on the paper show like it is. We're all kind of pretty, but it's not necessarily that, but we are struggling from month to month to pay the baseline bills. That doesn't include the fact if we have a hiccup and something come in that we have to have unexpectedly, like tractor repairs, backhoe repairs, servers, body cam servers or anything like that. We don't have much cushion for anything extra. I have given y'all the numbers that I worked on. If y'all have another angle you want me to plug in numbers real quick, I'll plug them in. Any of the numbers that I've given you in these options though, they will fluctuate per month. They're calculated based on closest to the thousands that they are used, like if it's 4,500 gallons of anything used, it was calculated based on 5,000. But the customer is billed based on 4,500 gallons. They're not rounded to the closest. These numbers, and some of it being based on that, are gonna be inflated just a little bit, but not very much. I ran the numbers and they're not inflated that much at all.
What kind of variation?
Let's see, one of the numbers, I wanna think it was the option. One second. Residential inside city limits, just the base one from option 2. Whereas my calculations show 29,902.96 because of it rounding to the closest thousand. The actual true number was 28.5. I think that was the biggest one. I think it was $1,200 something difference. And the reason why, like I said, I used 1,000, the round to 1,000 was because it's over the minimum. I could have gone the opposite direction and taken it down, and it would have given us more numbers, but these numbers are gonna fluctuate so much every month anyway. Did you calculate that?
5%.
5%.
Close.
That one is the worst one because there's so much activity.
By and large, overall, you're not gonna see that much variation.
Commercial was running on the, commercial inside city limits. I calculated based on the thousands, it's 44,2850. The true number is 38,59. $600 different.
So we're close enough. Close you come to it.
Well, like I said, it's gonna change every month anyway,
Exactly.
depending upon the usage.
So going forward, you have approval on rates you can make. We're looking at our business model and how we perform. Would be something we're constantly looking at to modify, to cut expenses. We're trying to give our citizens the services that they want. Your comment was well taken. That's just part of the process. So we've already get back in here and determine what you guys wanna do.
Well,
So what kind of plan do you wanna to lay out going forward?
based on the citizens, I think we have a lot of rental people. And they'll be affected the most by water. And we can't go up on taxes until next year. So maybe we should just look at going up on taxes. And that's gonna only affect homeowners, not
You're gonna survive until then, until next year.
Yeah.
But if you think about the city's jurisdiction, and they get property taxes,
Mhm.
it makes us no difference if someone owns or rents it. In fact, we get more money if someone is not a homesteader. Because if it's someone, there's people up here with $500,000 worth of houses in
But
Edgemont,
they're all homesteaded.
not if it's a renter.
No,
So, I mean, the city is actually better off with renters than homeowners.
but
And so it's a commonly held idea that renters somehow pay less taxes. They sort of indirectly pay taxes, but that's sort of from the city's perspective. We just have this limited amount of land. We charge property tax based on the land.
mhm.
And even the lots in Edgemont that are appraised for 40,000, some of them 50,000, you could fit 10 of those on some of the lots that are appraised for 200,000. And so, the fact that there's renters, and Lone Star in particular does have a lot of fixed income people
Mhm.
of all age levels. That's retirees and people who are younger who are on different kind of fixed incomes. That insulates Lone Star from a lot of the bad effects of the bad economy. But in any case, the renter versus homeowner thing is actually, from the city's perspective, just looking at, we have a jurisdiction defined by square foot of land. But that's a commonly held idea that, all over the country, that the people with properties that are worth less, like individually, they're paying less property tax.
Mhm.
But in Lone Star especially, as a whole, they're paying more, and per square foot or whatever, they're paying more, mostly. Not so much on the lakeside, but the
Then how are
rest,
the renters paying property tax?
they're being paid, the taxes are being paid. I don't care if who pays.
Or
them.
their
But they're being
owners
paid.
are paying.
Right. So from the government's, from the state's perspective, who cares who's paying it? They're
Yeah,
getting
but their
paid.
owners are paying it, even, but the renters aren't paying it.
Right,
That's
and
what
without a
you're saying.
homestead, so,
Yeah, cause they can't homestead it,
right.
but if you're an owner, you're homesteading it. That's what you're saying.
Yeah, it is.
But you
what
still
you
have
wanna
to pay
do.
property tax even though you're homesteading, you're just not paying it. It's
Just
not-
less,
You're just
so.
paying less.
The numbers are what they are.
Looking back over the numbers that we had from other cities. Omaha charges a base water rate of $25. I don't, Jamie called and talked to these guys, so I'm not sure if that's based upon residential, if there's a differentiation between residential and commercial. But they're $24.50 for the first 2,000 and $3.75 per thousand after that. In that respect, we are less on the base rate and higher on the over 1,000. As far as, I'm sorry, I read that wrong. That was Ore City. Omaha is $25 base rate plus $8 per thousand over that for water. They're $22 base rate for sewer and $2.75 per thousand over that. So the monthly bill is $70, that includes trash, and they're talking about increasing another 3%. So they're already higher than we are, and they're talking about increasing another 3%. To me, they're probably a fair comparison to where we're at. Hugh Springs is not real, I mean, Hugh Springs has more people coming in, and based upon their structure, I wouldn't compare us to them really, in my personal opinion, but I mean, their numbers were less.
We looked at that last week and
Yeah.
I don't have the, I didn't bring that piece of paper with me this week.
Well, right now, everything, including trash, we're at $58.76.
Mhm.
Omaha is at $70, and they're talking about increasing theirs 3%.
Mhm.
Ore City is at $62.94, and I don't know if they're gonna increase theirs or not. Hugh Springs at 55, and they're talking about increasing theirs 4%. And then Naples had already increased theirs, 3 months ago, and they're at 63.62.
Why do you feel like we're most comparable to Omaha?
In my gut feeling, size, I mean, we're both small. Correct me if I'm wrong, are they not comparable in size as what Lone Star is?
I don't know, what is the size of Omaha? I think you're all relatively,
What's our population?
similar.
A little over 1,000.
I have to look at, a little over 1,000, somewhere around there.
I mean, I think Lone Star is really unique compared to any other small town because of Edgemont. Because most small towns look like, well, they all look the same, they're sort of more spread out. Edgemont's much denser than any other small town because it was built in 2 years by the federal government. You know, it's like a suburb, but it's denser than modern suburbs. Whereas all these others are typical small towns where they are more spread out.
Spread out.
And so that makes it more efficient for infrastructure. You require a lot less pipe, you require a lot less sidewalks, streets, power lines, everything. But water and sewer, you require a lot less per customer. I mean, the most profitable part of the water system here is Edgemont.
I understand what you're saying as far as on this.
So I think it's really hard. I think Lone Star is pretty unique in this respect for a town this size.
And even across the way though, up there by the church, you know, that's,
That's
it's a
small,
little bit
yeah.
spread out, but I mean, it's got a little bit more elbow room than Edgemont does, but it's kind of a fair comparison to most of the neighborhoods in small cities.
Mhm.
So what is your thought then, based upon those figures that we were provided in comparison? We're at 58.76.
The water and sewer rate has to be based on expenses, right? I mean, it can't generate a profit. It's supposed to be,
Right.
and so the comparisons are relevant, you know, but it has to be based on expenses, so. I still don't understand across this 4-year period here, what our current situation is.
Well, again, like I said, on those numbers, I even went back to 2012 and looked at numbers, and there were some showing to be in the deficit back then, but then they got corrected. They're true numbers based upon our expenses and revenues that were coming in at the time. Why it shows, and it's not a calculation, a manual calculation, it's coming from QuickBooks, the numbers are. But, I can't answer why it's, because all I did and all that historically has been done is the numbers have been transferred, the report being downloaded from QuickBooks into an Excel spreadsheet.
And you said Ruth Nash had something to do with the spreadsheet, you've been in contact with her?
Talked to her, told her about what we had going on, and told her about even downloading it directly from QuickBooks. Told her that there have been no formulas changed, and she said, well, it sounds like you're doing, she said, because that's where I would have gone at. The only thing that she found that was different that had been done was because some of the numbers were based on 9-month instead of the 12-month. And it was basically used to kind of project what your next 3 months are gonna be when you go beyond the 9-month calculation. And she pointed it out, said, yeah, I was aware of that one because I looked back in several years prior to that, and they were the same way. So, but that has no effect. Only effect that would have is on your projection for your 3 months that you're not actually counting for real numbers.
So looking at 2021, the final numbers, those are real numbers, right? I'm looking at the handout from the 25th, page 3 of 4. I think there were 2 handouts that day. I'm not sure which one. Water and sewer, yeah.
Based upon 9
2021.
months. Based on the 9 months, yes.
Not the 9-month column, the second column from the right. It's a full year, right? 2021. It's the latest year that we have actual numbers.
2021, then we had 945,250 on expense on,
Yes,
I'm sorry, I'm looking at water and sewer. You're on general fund or water?
water and sewer.
Okay.
It showed us being 268,000 in the hole for that year.
Yes.
What happened?
Well, if you'll look at your total expenses are 945,250.35, and you take your gross profit from the, you take your expenses from your gross profit, that's why it's showing you 268 the rest. Because if you look on page 1, your gross profit for that year based upon those true numbers that came in was $677,074.91, and you subtract your total expense, and that's where it's coming from.
The negative 268. But what happened? Where did we come up with the money that we didn't have, that we were in the red with?
Can't answer that question.
Okay.
I wasn't there. I mean, that's, what I'm getting at though is, they're true numbers. But as far as, you had more expenses to go out than you had income coming in.
But still,
I know what you're saying, I know what you're thinking, I agree.
in the previous year, it was 250,000, 251,000. And at the end of the year, or,
Well, see, and Cody, I can go in here right now and I can run numbers based upon these years, and it'll give you what your expenses were. It's just like any bank account, if you have more expenses, unless there was some cushion money somewhere that's not,
well, it's consistent every year though.
Yeah. all I can explain it is based upon what I've seen is we have had more expenses going out than we've had profit. It could have been that prior years that there was a cushion of money back there that was there, that's not accounted for as far as on expenses. I don't know.
Surely not 4 years there, somebody showed up with $250,000.
The thing that doesn't do, it doesn't give you a starting balance. As far as like what you would in the checking account. And if you go back, your bank statements are reconciled each month. And You don't have a starting balance as of October 1, this is what we've got here. All we've got is expenses and revenue. And I kind of think that's kind of where you were talking about maybe something being negative in the background. It's not gonna, I mean, these numbers are based upon what was spent, these numbers are based upon what we received in. And I understand what you're saying, but I mean, there's nothing in the background that I can see that would offset it. These are based upon true numbers.
If you ran to each bank account that these funds are shifted to and from, query based on a 12-month period, because most of them will allow you to pull results. Look at the sums for input and output for each of the 12 months from each account. And I would say you're not gonna find a negative 200,000 because somebody's not getting paid, and if I'm not paid 200,000, I'm gonna be screaming. So, I mean, that's the end, you know. I'm guessing that our input and output is much closer together if you were to actually look at the bank account and not QuickBooks where a typo, I'm not saying you made a typo, but there's any number of things that could get a ledger off
Well,
that a bank statement's not gonna do.
right, but we have, for every transaction that goes into QuickBooks, we have a paper trail that we follow. Because that's one thing I'd suggest, that we never go paperless, just for the fact of, in the event that you have a hiccup, you can always go back to that piece of paper. And you compare those numbers when you do your balance, you know, when you do your statements each month. You've gotta have all those numbers accounted for. The only thing, and the one thing that I know in water and sewer that is quite confusing, and there is an account to where it'll show like an adjustment, because one month you may have to make an adjustment in that account to a negative, which is gonna be a credit. The next month you may have to put it as a positive, which is gonna be a debit. And that's because of KUSI payments. Whenever we have people that go online and make payments for their water and sewer bill, they will make a payment. Well, they run that in batches, and when they run that in batches, say if they run, say a person has a e-check that bounces, they don't have enough money in there, they'll rerun that later on, or they will, or either we get it sent back to us via e-check. You have to, they don't get all their batches run by the 30th or the 31st. Some of it may roll over into the next month, and you have to adjust that. So, from what I've seen, as far as, if you adjust one in the negative this month, then you adjust it in the positive next month to offset those. That is the only thing that I have found in QuickBooks and on any of our accounts that's quite confusing. And I even drilled down and went through every transaction one month to capture the ones that they didn't run all the batches in time, trying to see if, well, if I drill down each month, is that gonna, how much is that gonna offset me to where I don't have to make these adjustments? Well, by the time I spent hours doing that to manually go through each one of them, it was more feasible for the city for me to go through the adjustment, because next month it's gonna fix it anyway. And those are usually minimal amounts, you know. And I do look at the numbers on the bank statements to see the ins and outs.
What kind of variance do you normally see on a month-to-month basis, in versus out?
The in is accounted for. The outs with the outstanding checks is not that much, you know, not usually. I try to have as many checks written earlier in the month that I can possibly, because to close out the month end. But just like right now, we've got checks that's gonna be going out, need to be done for the payments on the second or third, so I'll have to do those. So they're not that far off. And like I said, every transaction is gonna get captured.
So QuickBooks should, if it's configured, it should be syncing with the bank accounts, or are they manually entered?
This one is a desktop version of QuickBooks, so therefore it's not an online version. That was something that was done before I got here.
Can you look at your QuickBooks assumption of how much money you have in your account and check the actual bank statement and see if there's
Yes.
a big variance there.
Yes. I've gotten to where I'm going in daily on water and sewer account report, especially because of it being so tight. And watching and making my posts, I'm doing my debits and my credits, making sure as far as on what's coming in, what's going out, because my numbers were so tight. I mean, I was showing to be red in the books, in QuickBooks, but it's because I had some checks that I was holding. And, I went through and made sure, as far as before me pushing them through, that where I was at on my statement was.
So we're probably not still talking more than 5,000 per check on a typical
I've got a between $11,000 and $12,000 a month for sanitation, I'm sorry. About $11,000 a month for Northeast Texas, about between 11 and 12 for sanitation solutions. I mean, there's some checks that I have to write for.
But are you sitting on those at one time, or are they being
No, I
doled
stagger
out
them out.
throughout? Right, so you're not sitting on more than probably 10,000 at a time.
Usually not.
It still doesn't make sense to me with accounting background that this 200,000, 250,000 number, why somebody isn't asking us for money if that number is real. I'm not accusing you of
No,
anything.
no, and that, I'm right there with you. That's
But
what
it's
we've
good
talked
that it's
about.
consistent across all 4 years. So whatever's going on here, whatever's been figured has been figured consistently.
Well, and the thing about it is, like I said, these numbers are true numbers based on the input and outputs.
So I think your starting point is where you're off, based on what QuickBooks thinks we as a city have versus what's really in the account.
Well, at the end of each month, when I balance my statements, the only account of all of the accounts that would be questionable would be water and sewer, and that would be the Cousins. They are, like I said, batched, where Karen does a single transaction. We, with our deposit, we account for with our deposits. I did, like I said, go through 1 month and analyze the whole month with Kusi, and whenever they had some that were,
Did they run?
run in different batches, it would carry over into the next month, but it was eventually captured.
Did they run?
If I hold that out and hold off until Kusi captures it for the next month, then I will be out of balance on my bank statement.
What is Kusi?
Ryan Rocks, right?
It's a, Continental Utilities Service type thing. It's our, software to where we, pay our water bills. We've got
E-check
a,
processor, is it right?
what?
E-check processor,
He's only trying to find a way to use funds.
I just speculated.
Who do y'all have?
It doesn't matter.
I don't know, that- yeah, say it that way. It's a program that we put in, Kusi and Harmony work together on water and sewer bills. So, anyway,
So Ryan took off running. Please let me know if you catch.
all I can tell you is, like I said, when you have profit, your projected profit coming in and your projected expenses are higher than your projected profit coming in, that's why we're where we're at, as far as on the numbers.
He's gonna try to make his way back if you sprint.
And it is getting hard every month to pay bills.
Alright.
If we didn't have to pay the USDA monthly, it would help quite a bit, but we have to do that. And that's about a little over $12,000.
If we weren't doing that, we'd be band-aiding the pumps every month.
Yep. Catch 22. And like I said, in my opinion, where we may have messed up, we didn't give us much of a cushion. Because, I mean, they'll take, I think they've taken $60,000 out already in payment this year for it. And it hits, you know, you've got to take that $11,000, $12,000 every month, otherwise you're not gonna have it when they come.
How much cushion should we have had? $1 million? You've got to match your revenues and your expenditures, and that's an expenditure.
Well, when I looked back, the most that I found was $14,000 that was put back on it. And then that was on one of the transactions. And then I saw there was a little bit more added, but 14,000 was, I remember thinking 18? 17 or 18?
I know the rates all went up on water and sewer with about 3 years before we did the USDA because they required it, or
Right.
they required us to put some money aside. I know that water and sewer was, and this is gonna offend some people, but was kind of used as a piggy bank. We always used them for money to cover things that the general fund couldn't afford because we had raised the rates on the water.
Right now, they're running neck and neck, because last year, when general fund was running low on something, I borrowed money from water and sewer, but I paid it back to water and sewer. Right now, they're both running very slim. You don't have cushion on, and we're looking into some other things to see, as far as on some of the inputs and outputs, as far as the water sewer, making sure we're capturing everything with, meter reading and everything. You know, we're drilling down, trying to make sure we're getting every penny we can, so we don't have to, I mean, as far as based on what's supposed to be coming in, that we're not missing something. So,
Any more comments? Lots about this.
lost prepared.
Can't quantify some of the numbers. And we've got a motion on a decision, and beyond that, any comments on how we might change structurally?
I'll go back to what I was saying a while ago, where we completely, I don't know what everybody's opinion is about the part-time officer. We need to get that straight priority for them. If you're a part-time officer at 1,040 hours per year, which is half time, basically 20 hours a week, $15 an hour, you're talking about $15,000. That's no benefits, that's on that. So, you need to get that decision made before we go further. I don't know how we make it up, but I think we almost have to do that, but that's just my opinion, you know, whatever everybody thinks.
And that would come out of general fund.
I understand that. I understand that. But we're talking, well, I'm not gonna get into it tonight, but we have stuff that has been passed. If we would just send it and get the ordinances approved, I know we have $10,000 sitting out there that we could collect. I know we have, because we passed the ordinance to get it done. It just never has, nothing against you, but it hasn't been to the lawyer, it hasn't been approved, and you haven't got it back, so we haven't had it enacted. There's one that I know that will bring us in between $6,000 and $8,000 when we get it approved. So, I'm not saying you have $1 million out there, but if we start doing the things we need to do, there is some money there, and in addition to that, start going through with our permits, reviewing everything, our fees, looking at all that. There's money there. It's just, we're gonna have to work at it to get it updated and get that income coming in. So there is some, not a lot, not $1 million, but it would be a lot. It would be enough to offset any issues you have with what we're dealing with in the general fund. Now, I don't know about water and sewer. I'm kind of like, and I'll say this, I'm like Keith and Cody. We don't know where those numbers are coming from. And you've done with Ruth, and we've done that, but for 3 or 4 years, we said the same thing. How do we, why can't we figure this out? I don't know. Is it a QuickBooks issue? Is it the way it was initially put into QuickBooks, the way it was initially set up? Is it, extrapolating something that we don't need to be extrapolating? I can't answer that question. QuickBooks is becoming antiquated. People are quitting using it all the time because of issues similar to this. But we can't do that. We have to deal with what we
Well, the
have.
only other thing I can think of, I can create a spreadsheet to side independent of QuickBooks, more especially for water and sewer, populate it with data, based upon independent numbers. I mean, it's going to get, have a starting balance based on a bank statement, and then go from there and kind of use that in comparison to what we're doing as far as on the budget. I mean, that's the only other thing, that's kind of
That's
the
a tremendous
elementary.
amount of extra work, I understand.
The statutes on municipal budgets say they're supposed to be comparable to prior years. But I think we may need to look at restating prior years somehow or something. I don't know. I've looked at Omaha and Naples and Dangerfield and Hugh Springs, and Hugh Springs has the clearest budget, in my view. It's
What
just-
do they do different? Because I know George Font had
It's just very simple, the way that it's broken down on the first page. It's like 5 categories where the budget comes from, and then the following pages, it breaks those down.
I don't have a problem changing our format. I just use the format that y'all were accustomed to in the past.
The law
We-
says it should be comparable to prior years, but if prior years are not good, then we may need to restate prior years or something to make it comparable.
And what we may have to do is start out and see what we can figure out for a month or two on the numbers. If you're wanting to do it a different way, compare it and see if that's gonna give us an indication of where there's an issue to go back and start looking. There's gotta be something there. Let me rephrase that. There's a very good possibility there's something there that was put in way back when that's calculating it, and you don't know it, and neither does anybody else. But if it's been consistently like this, and we've talked about the same issue year after year after year,
Yep.
and it keeps coming up, the same year after year after year, there's gotta be something somewhere that's causing it. Either that, or it just brings up the point that we're so far out of line, and we have been for years, that we should have caught it way back when and not now. So,
Well, let me ask you a question in respect to, water and sewer primary is gonna be the biggest issue because of all the numbers. And like I said, I've gone back to 2012. I've researched, I don't know another angle to research other than the fact that I'm a old school, give me the ins and the outs. I can put it in a spreadsheet and get out of all these different accounts. Because I mean, if you're putting something in and out, like just a checking account, you're gonna have those numbers available, and that's basically what this is. It's being calculated based upon the ins and outs. But to go based upon, if you've got more revenue going out, I mean, if you got less revenue coming in than you have expenses, that's a no-brainer, you're gonna be in the red, and that's what we've got. Based upon, unless there's additional revenue that comes in which you'll see, based upon history, there's sometimes that we miss the revenue coming in. You would have to compare it to your projection for year by year, but looking at your final numbers on each one of these categories, we're not that far off. I mean, I've drilled down looking at each, transactions on that.
well, I can remember whenever I first got on the council, Devin would say, those numbers don't worry about those numbers because they change.
They're fluid.
They're fluid.
They're fluid.
And I'm like, okay,
I
but,
don't like that word fluid in respect when it comes to money.
well, I know that, but we're talking about formulas
Yeah.
and all that kind of stuff, they change. Who knows, maybe somebody, when they set up something, didn't put a dollar sign to keep it static, I don't have a clue. But there has to be something out there, and I'm not saying there has to be, but there's a good possibility there's something out there that's being captured. We discussed this early on, there may be something out there that's capturing it and throwing it into something that it shouldn't be. Now, what that is, I can't answer, I don't know, because I haven't looked at everything in detail. But, I think we gotta do something, because next year's gonna be the same thing, next year's gonna be the same, we're gonna say, well, how come we're this? Well, until we start drilling down and figuring it out, we're never gonna figure it out.
Well, as well, when you put books on accounting or anything, you've got your revenues, you've got your expenses and all that. Unless there's some category at some point in time that's set up incorrectly,
Naples and all
I'll
that
look at
stuff.
some of them, I haven't gone through all of them.
Yeah.
But
I'm just,
I mean, that would be maybe one thing that instead of it, adding the number into a value, it's taking it away.
Well,
So
maybe
set
it's-
up, but that's,
possibility, when it was set up, it's looking at something and the way it's moving it from an account, to the budget, to the, balance sheet, maybe I'm not saying there is, I'm just saying, you have to consider all the realm of possibilities until we narrow it down and figure out what's causing it. And maybe there's nothing causing it. Maybe it's a true and accurate point, and we just gotta suck it up and do something about it, but
Has anyone taken the budget papers, and I don't have them, so, but it's broken, at least from my memory, it's broken down in sections. Has anybody hand calculated each individual section to get the subtotals and then calculated all the subtotals to see if it's in some at the bottom matches?
I have gone through several sections and done that when I was verifying formulas. And in Excel, when you download it, all you gotta do is highlight from point A to B, and it gives you a little subtotal down there on the bar. I've done that, the totals were adding up in respect to that. I did not go through from section to section,
Just the
but I did
subtotals
verify
can see
several of the
grand total
sections
is
alone.
accurate.
I can do that, just as a cross comparison. But again, like I said, if we need to change our format or do something different in respect to this, I was using what had been used since 2011, 2012, so in that format.
I don't think anybody blames you.
No, I'm not, I'm just, hey, I have scratched my head, I have put numerous hours trying to figure out where, why, and how. And it's like I've told Randy, I said, Randy, we can't, that's why we broke down and called Ruth. Something's gotta be not right here. Well, that's why I exported everything directly from QuickBooks. But if QuickBooks is the problem, then it's not gonna get any better.
it's gonna
So-
stay consistent.
in not knowing how QuickBooks was set up, I've drilled down and looked at some of the categories, but I have not looked at all of them. But based upon our sections, I can start drilling down on that, and try to go to each category. I'm an ex-banker, everything that was a debit was a credit. Debits and credit are opposite in accounting, so I have to think about the accounting aspect. That was one of the things I was worried about, but I went back through historically, looked at transactions to 2012, when they made reference. I wanna make sure that I didn't have my banking hat on that I put it in as a debit and it should have been a credit,
Right.
So, and I have not found anything yet.
I have a question.
Listen,
If you go up on the water, do you have to go up on the sewer?
that's y'all's call.
Okay,
No, you don't have to.
okay.
The meeting.
I'm gonna make a motion that we go up 3% on the water. Across the board.
3%, which is not even calculated on here.
Well, I'm going by what Omaha did on theirs. You gave us that.
Okay, understanding that at 5% on water,
Mhm. I'm not trying to kill the citizens.
that's gonna be inclusive of sewer, so hang on.
Here's page four.
If you don't raise the rate high enough, you're gonna give them a much worse service.
It's gonna,
Even at 5%,
uh-huh,
you're only gonna increase monthly $2,000.
okay,
That's at 5%.
okay. Well, then I'll change my, to 5% then.
Which one, which model?
$2,000 is gonna be $24,000 within a year for just water.
So that's what confuses me.
If you go, let me see if I can do it on the computer.
option 3 be at 5%?
Option 3 at 5%.
Uh-huh,
38, 67, 86.
okay,
Without the water, I mean, without the sewer.
yeah,
Oh,
That's what I'm saying, she's taking the sewer off.
She said 3% first, what would it be at 3%?
yeah, but we don't have it calculated.
Hang on,
That's
I'm
what I
thinking
think
There's
it's
2,000.
Yeah.
My eyes are going crazy.
Yeah.
He was in it, he was an email. And they walked out. Oh, wow.
You're gonna go up 61 cents on your base fee at 3%.
Okay.
Which is gonna make you $21.05 at 3%. And
Just walked out. Just walked out, did you?
that was based on the 2044 for the special account, so it's gonna be 69 cents total at 3%. Change the rate to be 23.69, and
Does that make it more complicated in bookkeeping to separate the two?
what do you need to separate the two? Oh, no, I'm just putting it out to the side on this.
You mean on calculating the bills every month?
Mm-hmm,
I guess it's no, but I don't know.
Well, we'll go into the computer and put it into the calculation into the computer, and then the computer automatically do it on the,
okay.
on the.
Well, I was just thinking, you know,
What if you raise the base rate by a fixed amount of $2? Don't touch any of the rest of it. If you've got 600 paying customers times $2 is 1,200 a month times 12 months, about $14,400. If my math is correct.
well, that sounds,
And then it's easier to budget as an individual, knowing my bill's gonna be $2 more, not 5% of
Yeah.
whatever.
see, you and I think alike.
Well, if you did that, where the city would lose money at, as far as trying to build up their loss, would be because once you get, you're talking about the base rate at 2,000 gallons and less.
Right. It's easier to calculate for you, and it's easier for the customer, the citizen, to figure in their own budgets.
If they know that their bill's gonna be $2 more.
Well, the thing of it is, that's, right now, the way we're set up, it's based upon, I mean, if you did that, this one right here shows a 25-cent increase for the additional every 1,000, so if you change that to, the first 2,000 is $25, and then you convert that back to $5 every additional 1,000 gallons, I mean, it's gonna go up to $2 per person anyway.
That's also aggressive in nature in that it
That's a
spreads
higher
that
percentage,
expense
actually.
out over the people at the smallest end of use and the highest end.
That's actually more of an eight, that's that's probably about a 9% increase, because at 8% it goes up $1.84, and at 10% it's $2.30.
Okay. Let's go back to just the, across the board, the 5% on option 2. And just do this water and sewer. Just to make it simple.
Is that a motion?
That is a motion. I make a motion that we increase the water and sewer 5% on option 2.
Do we hear a second? Got a second from Ms. Jerry. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
You're all voting?
Did you vote?
Okay. 1 nay and 4 yeses. So that passes.
That's done.
Option 2, 5%.
That includes increasing the sewage cap.
Don't think so.
Good, I think that's
I'll have to look on that.
Now, that's gonna be
Option
keeping,
2 doesn't increase it.
option 2 keeps your sewage at 10,000 gallons.
The budget as is, you're approving? Sorry. Ask the council.
I'm sorry, what was your question?
You're approving the budget as is, with a 5% increase in option 2? Is that where we are?
Mhm.
So, go back to the original question I had earlier, does that mean we're not considering a part-time officer? Just asking the question.
Yeah.
It should be in there to 37. It's only part-time would be like 15. Oh,
If you have 1,040 hours times $15 an hour is 15.6.
and we're increasing it by 37. So the officer is.
That's the pay bills.
Yeah, as you said, that's just to pay the bills, it's not to add another officer. That's why we ran so many scenarios in here.
So that's actually the lowest increase, using the 5% of the options, of any of them that were offered. And again, that 37,000 that it shows to be estimated annual increase, that's gonna be a little to the upper side, because we rounded to the nearest thousand. Said it was about $1,200, $1,300 different than the true numbers, but those true numbers are gonna fluctuate month to month. It's gonna depend upon water usage, what we actually receive in. And I figure in summer months, we're gonna use more water than we will in winter months.
So, we're taking another part-time officer and approving this rate, we've already approved the rate, is this where we wanna go?
And again, this is water and sewer rate, not general fund.
Yeah.
ask whenever y'all want this to go into effect, if we're gonna go with this option two. October 1.
When it goes into effect October 1st?
October 1st.
Because we'll have to change the ordinance.
Well, what does the ordinance say now?
It identifies your rates. If you're going with option two, your rate will go up $1.15 from $23 for the first 2,000 to $24.15. And then for the commercial, it'll go up from $25 to $26.25 for the first 2,000 gallons, and then of course it goes up from there based on usage.
Some places don't, probably don't use 2,000 gallons of water,
They don't, yes,
because I don't.
yeah, you're correct.
And my field is 65, 70 gallons, so I don't.
So, October. Here's my thing about the fourth officer. I know we probably are very tight on funds, and we may have to poop some money. But I feel like if we do not put a fourth officer on, it is really gonna be a detriment to the city in many ways.
Susan's already made her comment requesting that and want it.
Yes,
But how are you gonna pay for it? That's the reality.
it is a reality. And sometimes, it's like the field of dreams, build it and they will come.
Now,
No,
No.
I understand that. But there've been times in the past, we didn't have the money to pay for things, but somehow we did it.
but we run to the end of that. All the indications are.
I've been on the council before when we were in the red. You have to keep, when we were in the red.
Are you talking legitimately in the red?
Oh, yeah, yeah. Jerry has too.
So here's my,
So how you gonna, if you get yourself back in the corner where you're in the red, how are you gonna dig yourself out of that?
I don't know,
The
but
same way we backed in the corner for everybody get their raises when some of them don't.
we've done it every year I've been on the council when Devin was here. And she said, oh, it's just, it was always in the red, every year. Every single year, it was in the red. Don't ask me how, but it was. It never balanced out.
You talking about just on the budget part?
Yeah. Every single solitary year. Magically, somehow we made it through. I don't know how it happened. But Keith asked her every year, he asked her, you did. How can this happen? And she said, oh, it's just on paper. Am I not, is that correct?
Don't worry about it.
Don't worry about it.
Well, all I'm gonna say on it is, I have freaked out enough over this on paper alone to where when it continuously rises from one year to another in the wrong direction, the paper's gonna catch up with the reality, in which we're real close to that now.
There have been times it's been more than that.
And then again, probably need to go back to all of you city secretaries we had before. That's where the money went out the front door.
Well, I can assure you, there's no money going out the
I didn't
front.
say you were.
No, I'm just saying.
Let's don't start, then we can't stop.
No, I'm just saying, I can account for every penny that we've had, I just, and
I
I'm not,
didn't
I'm
say
not,
you.
I know
It's-
this, Sherry, I'm not being defensive or anything, I'm just saying.
It's probably never been balanced until you.
well, here's a
When
question.
this roof was here, it was down.
Let me ask this question.
And it's the only time it ever been.
Go ahead, Reedy.
If you look at, look on page 2 of 6 on the general fund, look at 46,100 court receipts. Okay? 2021 final was 36,699.52. 21-22 budget was 38,340. We brought in 19,005.02. Part of that's due to COVID, I understand that. This year, we're budgeting 25,000. I would venture to, and I would anticipate, and I could be wrong, that if we add an additional officer, that should be at least 38,000. That's my thought process, because we haven't had that many contacts, because we've been telling people, don't waste gas, don't waste this, don't waste that. Well, at some point in time, that has to change.
Agreed.
Okay? If that changes, I know we had a warrant roundup, I forget when it was, and I forget how much money it brought in. I mean, I hate to use this word, but I'm assuming that will probably happen again. But in the same mouthful, I would think that if we put on a fourth officer, even if it's part-time, that number probably should go up significantly. So if you make that 38,000 just like it was for the 21-22 budget, you're adding 13,000 there, which offsets your 15,600, leaves you with $2,600. That's just, you're throwing numbers out, talking about stuff. That's an area that's got to go up. It's got to increase.
And the thing is, the officers don't have to drive up and down the road. They can park and patrol.
Well, the issue is we have so many, and I'm just telling you what people say.
Yeah.
You know, that we have so many people who come through here at 60 miles an hour and never slow down, either in a truck or a car. We need to do something about that.
Yep.
Now, how we do that,
Right, tickets.
it's very hard with the number of officers we have right now. But you put a part-time officer on, I would think that you may not stop a lot of people, but it's gonna be a deterrent, because people are gonna see you out there and they're gonna automatically slow down, which is the goal anyway. The goal is not to write a bunch of tickets, the goal is to get people to slow down.
Well, that's true.
Because eventually somebody's gonna get killed. I'm surprised that hasn't happened already.
Court receipts is restricted, fund income. What's it restricted to?
Court. We can't spend that on things other than with court affiliated.
That's state of Texas law, you can't spend on anything.
So with that being said, I can't pull money out of the court funds to pay for an officer. It would have to come in a roundabout way, it comes in general funds, which is like we've got in discussions before. All of those monies that are broken down into different categories under the court expenses based upon the monthly reports, you know, some of it goes to state. The city gets the money, the city gets 100% of funds that come in off of ordinance violations. But we don't necessarily get it when it comes off of tickets.
No, but the state have to have a certain point.
Mhm.
They take the vast majority of it.
Where they may get $50, we may get 10. You know, we're gonna get about a fifth on some accounts.
Get $8 ticket rate. State law was to get the right 1,000 with tickets to make up $15,000.
But if
I don't
our
know.
crime
I
keeps
got
going
one,
up,
$240.
nobody wants to
The
live
city only
here.
gets $8, the state
If crime
takes the
keeps
rest.
going up, nobody wants to be here.
That's where the ordinance, if we do the violations of ordinances, the city would get all of that. You know, dilapidated houses.
There are, I'm telling you right now, there's probably conservatively $10,000 to $15,000 sitting out there. All we gotta do is pull the trigger on the ordinances and get them signed off on, and we can do it pretty quick. I just tell them, it just is.
In lieu of the in lieu of the responsibilities that people around this table have, how are we gonna get that done? The ordinances updated.
They've already been done, it's already been done. It's been approved, it's gotta go to the attorney to get signed off on.
There are 2 ordinances that Kenny and I were working on that we're
Right.
gonna have to make some changes on, but Kenny's not here to do that.
Well, then we need to get in here and get those ordinances and get those changes made so we can get them submitted.
What do you mean changes on ordinance? What would that entail?
They've gotta be updated in compliance with, whatever there were some things that he was talking about they had to be updated with.
So like they passed an ordinance, say in 1965, and then the legislature passed a law that made it not enforceable, or what do you mean?
On the one particular one that Rudy's talking about, it would be some fees, implementation of some fees, and then, I'm trying to remember back, there was some wording on it that had to be corrected based upon, something with code enforcement.
In any case, this should be done by passing a new ordinance which supersedes the previous ordinance, right?
No differently than us changing this tonight, I'll have to update 273 with our modifications tonight.
Which Rudy could probably, you can make some of the changes and go through it.
Well, I've got it on the computer right now.
Yeah.
All I gotta do.
But we don't ever actually change an ordinance.
You amend
Well,
it.
you amend it.
You amend it.
Yeah.
You update it, amend it.
So, you know, I'm just, we have done, historically, I will say this, we have done a bad job of keeping up with the ordinances that would help us bring in $10, $15 here, $10, $15 there. I know that's not a lot, but you multiply that times
Well, they say
100 and multiply that times 10 years, that's a lot of money.
When they say 50 cents for this and $1 for that,
Yeah.
those are things that need to be updated.
Yeah.
I was looking at one the other day that another city had where I think we've got a $25 fee, I think they had a $100 fee.
Yeah, and I'm not saying we have to charge what another bigger, a huge city is, but we need to come out of the 18th century and update things to where when you do something, there is a requirement to get a permit, and once you get a permit, there's a requirement to get that inspected to make sure, only because, and I use roofs as an example, because, you know, you get Tommy John, Billy Sue, whatever, to put on a roof, and it's not inspected, and you don't get a permit for it, something happens to that, it's not just them that suffers. It's all of us because of insurance rates. And that's not fair to everybody else. So that's the purpose of the ordinance for the permits and stuff like that, is to make sure that everybody's in compliance, so your insurance rates don't go out of whack, and all that stuff goes out of whack, because then it affects all of us in a negative way. So, and there's a lot of those that need to be updated and done, you know? So, I mean,
I'm not trying to argue against your point, I'm just trying to find how we get it done so we can move forward.
yeah.
Because this thing has been talked about.
And that's the issue, is we just gotta, I don't know whether we have to call a meeting, whatever we have to do, sit here and hash it out. But it's got, we gotta take them one at a time. I mean, right now, I think the ultimate goal for everybody would be, it would be great to turn it over to a company and have them update our ordinances and put them onto, that's all great. That's a utopia right now that we can't get to. So what it's gonna do is it's gonna fall on the people around this table to sit down and look at these ordinances and say, okay, you know, this is what we've seen from this town, this town, this town, this town, this town. This is what ours is. What do we need to do to make it comparable? Not to be extenuating and reach way out there to the moon, but to make it comparable so we're not basically losing our shirt on stuff like that, you know? And at the same time, we're making the city where if somebody new wants to come in and build a new structure or something like that, it's all up and up, it's up to code, it's up to everything else, so.
I'm all for it. So as far as the model, you want to go forward with a part-time police officer? Yes.
I would think yes, but
Is that a
Make a
motion?
for it.
I'll make a motion, we hire a fourth officer part-time at $15 an hour.
Can you do that at this meeting, or does that need to be a separate item? I mean, other than the budget?
Well,
You know,
we can
I'm-
add it to the
We can
budget.
add it to the budget, that's,
Yeah,
Yeah, we
that's
just
what
add
this
it.
meeting encompasses.
so let me change it, say, I'll make a motion, we add it to the budget, for that person. At $15 an hour, that would be for 1,040 hours max, that's $15,600 per year.
Does it have to have a second?
Yeah.
I second it.
Is this the budget vote right here?
Well, it's
This is
for it to
just
go on the
adding
budget.
this to the,
It's just for it to go on the budget.
And to pay for that, one thing that could be considered is this budget has between the restricted funds from the court and, so that's income, and the expenses of the court, $10,000 difference, which comes out of the general fund. So if you considered, if you didn't have the municipal court, you'd have $40,000 available rather than a $10,000 sink. $10,000 hole.
But then you're gonna get to
Who's gonna enforce the
enforce the
ordinance?
So you
ordinances.
can't enforce ordinances without a municipal court.
You can't do what, I'm sorry?
You can't enforce ordinances without a municipal court. I think some have done it. I think Hugh Springs probably does it. I think there are ways that it is done in county courts, but I don't understand or know how that works. But Texas Municipal League says you don't have to have a city court, but if you don't, then you can't enforce city ordinances.
And if we don't enforce city ordinances, then that's gonna be potential revenue that we don't get in addition to along
Yeah,
with the
it's
court.
gonna be
In the last-
the law west of the Pecos.
In the last 2 to 2.5 years, we've had 5, 4, and 3 full-time police officers at various times. So we have a good data set, and that's included a code enforcement officer. So that's in the last, I think since 2020, or the end of 2019. So what's the best period we've had with collections from ordinance enforcement with a code enforcement officer?
There hasn't been, I can tell you that, for years, because the ordinances haven't been updated. Till you update the ordinances and change the structure on the fee schedules, you're not ever gonna get anything done.
But we've had ordinances that the code enforcement and the police officers have enforced. I don't think they've been held back by the
Well,
state of
the-
the ordinances.
The gentleman who was your enforcement officer before
Kenny.
didn't enforce them like he should. I promise you that.
Can you do the next thing?
Hang on just a second. So Rooney made a motion to budget for
Oh,
a
yeah.
part-time fourth officer. Who
And I
seconded?
second it,
Did y'all vote on that?
not yet.
No. We'll vote, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No
No.
vote? No? Okay.
Okay,
So you're ready to,
Will John.
I second it.
anyone else? As far as you wanna take this tonight?
Mm-hmm.
You sure?
Okay, so if I go in and I add that fourth officer at part-time, that's gonna put you, based on your budget, 15,000 in red.
Okay.